know if you can relate to this, but growing up the way that we did, I felt that we weren't allowed to have pain because we had so much.
All right, y'all. So we going right out of the gate with these gems. That was a short but mighty example of the many, many gems interspersed all throughout this episode. And here we have Rumor. I believe this is Rumor. My apologies in advance if I mix up Rumor and Tallulah. She talked about how she felt because she grew up with so much, she didn't really have the right to experience pain. And while I didn't grow up with a whole lot, definitely not any kind of Hollywood level wealth or anything like that, I could definitely relate to feeling guilty sometimes for feeling pain when I feel so blessed, really, right? And, over time, I've learned to overcome that survivor's guilt and feeling kind of shame for allowing myself to feel those human emotions. You can maintain both things, right? Like you can acknowledge that something is hurtful, that you are experiencing pain, and still acknowledge and recognize that you're blessed. You can recognize that this pain is affecting me really deeply while still recognizing the fact that other people are going through painful things as well. We really do ourselves a disservice when we get into this competition, this almost like pain Olympics, where we tell ourselves or other people that we don't have the right to experience pain as we do because somewhere somebody else has it worse. It's really unhealthy, y'all. Like, I don't know what else to say about that, but this really drove home with me. That said, we're gonna keep diving in. Hi, I'm Selena, and welcome to Selena's Musings. This is where I like to share my thoughts, perspectives, opinions, and things that inspire me. Now, as you can see from the title and from the clip that I just showed, today's musing is based on what I consider to be a very inspirational Red Table Talk featuring Demi Moore and her daughters Rumor and Tallulah. Y'all, this was a really, really powerful one. It delved into a lot of different intergenerational dynamics, and I thought that it was especially interesting that it focused on mothers and daughters specifically. So without further ado, we're gonna hop into the next insight.
Even today when Willow and I were having a conversation about some decisions that she was making, I was like, here is the codependency. Exactly. And she got that from me.
Well, one of the things is that I started to look at issues that, say, Rumor had with her self-esteem that did not reflect her environment, her insecurity, her self-loathing, just the torture of feeling not good enough, which is exactly what I had been dealing with for my whole life. Right. She was carrying the weight of my issue. And I understood where mine came from, but there was a degree of it that just didn't match. And
from like super, super little. And another thing that I found really interesting, and it's something I know that you're working on, you can tell your kids, I love you. I love you so much every day. But if that's not reflected in how you feel about yourself as the mother, your kid is gonna pick up on that, and not be able to necessarily take in, oh, I'm so amazing because my mom says I'm amazing. Right. If my mom doesn't love herself, like how can I do that?
How can I expect her to love herself?
What did you see in your mother that you felt was a reflection of how you felt or feel?
A lot of the just like unworthiness. Like I'm innately unlovable somehow, no matter how I look, what I weigh, like how my hair looks, whatever the outside reflection is, there's something innately about me that I have to earn love from people and like constantly prove myself. That and a lot of the stuff with men.
All right, y'all. That codependency clip really felt like a read on my life. Like, honestly, I had to watch that a few times because it really stuck home. I mean, for a few reasons. One, I've recognized over the years that I have issues with codependency that, they're really rooted in a lot of things. And I think that sometime I'll delve into that more. But certainly, I think watching my mother really struggle with codependency played a factor, and that's not to blame her. But I do really think that we show our children better than we can tell them, right? So if you have a child and you constantly tell them that they're valuable, that they're worthwhile, that you love them, and all these great things, but you don't feel that way about yourself, and you are modeling to that child, feeling worthless, feeling like you have to earn love, no matter what it is that you're trying to pour into the child, if you have not first poured it into yourself, it's not always going to take hold, right? So I think this is really a testament to parents about how important it is to really pour into yourself, to really learn how to love yourself, because it will allow your child to see that, to model that, to mirror that.
I don't think my mom was raised, she was forged.
Yeah.
You know, like she was made. And the strength that comes from that, it's intimidating and it's scary. And and as growing up, it was like,
Low-key, I kind of feel that way about my mom.
you know what I mean? It's like
forged in the fire
there was like
flame.
metal
And then it rose.
100%. Like, you know, sparks flying everywhere. I think we deified her. I think she was this larger than life being.
Absolutely.
And she was, I mean, I'm completely obsessed with her.
Yeah.
Like, I love her more than anything.
I'm completely obsessed with my mom,
Oh my
too.
God, I think I'm obsessed with her.
But would you also say that you guys created a standard for me of your expectation that was also greater than what you would put on anybody else? Like my room my room for error was very low.
I will say, but I will say that. But also, I think that is a byproduct of, and I'm not saying this in a blaming way, but I think that that's also a byproduct of you not necessarily being weak in front of us.
That I know. I agree.
You know what I mean?
No,
Because
I agree 100%.
They're fine.
So this point here, right? This idea that a parent or someone that you look up to can become deified in your eyes is something that I touched on in another video recently about putting people on pedestals. And I'll put the link down below to that. But, you know, really, we think of this as a way of kind of honoring the person. And, you know, here Rumor and Willow are talking about how they're obsessed with their moms and they love them so much. But in a way, they don't really see their mothers, right? They have effectively dehumanized them. And to some extent, and you know, they get to this at the end of the clip, mothers sometimes will kind of feed into that by not being vulnerable with their children. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. But it's kind of this two-way street, right? Where we do have to learn how to allow the people that we really admire, that we really look up to be human, right? Because they are going to err. And it's okay and natural to be disappointed. But we also have to be understanding in that they are human and they have limitations.
Back in the day, like if I would be crying or have an upset, the energy was always like, take that somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like take that somewhere else.
Because that's how
and
I
deal
was
with it on
treating
your
myself.
own.
I didn't want to be with my own feelings.
I mean, I do think in your survival mechanism, that toughness I'm so grateful that I had, but when it seems that you're not affected or that you handle things so well on the outside, I realized that I did a disservice by not letting them see me weak. I think we need to show them not just our strength, but how we process to get through disappointment, upset, hurt.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on that. I think that was the place that I got to, of getting to a place of vulnerability.
Exactly.
Where I could cry in front of Willow.
It took you a long time
It took
to
me
like...
a long time because of that forging. There's this wall, there's this armor. And I was thinking about how it does a disservice to everybody we love, including ourselves.
Do you feel like you overcompensated for creating safety for them or wanting to create a safe environment for them?
I definitely overcompensated, and I want to just take a moment and just say to you that I'm sorry.
You're gonna make me cry.
Yeah, she'll do that. You know, because you don't necessarily have, because you want to create safety, vulnerability is not safe.
Exactly, 100%.
The way that we grew up, the way my mother grew up, you feel like you have to be strong. And the first thing you want to do is teach your girls how to be strong.
Because you didn't have a choice.
We didn't have a choice.
No, I mean,
Right?
that's why
And
like,
that's
your
part of
baseline
the-
was like life or death.
Exactly.
Like,
That was our baseline, right? And so as we come into our healing, we come into our softness and our vulnerability, there was a time that her tears were so offensive to me.
I'm sure.
So offensive, which I was like, take that over there.
Yeah.
We can't afford that here, not realizing bitch, you can afford it here. You're not in Baltimore anymore. Okay? You absolutely can afford it here, right? Yeah. But I have to confront the fact that I denied her that. And I have to confront the fact that I can give it to her now and I can nurture now.
This was another one that really resonated with me deeply. I kind of felt it on both sides because I have at times felt like, you know, kind of like what Willow said, like, you know, you got to take those tears somewhere else. You got to take it over there, because I grew up in an environment where, you know, that was seen as weak a lot of times. Not necessarily in my household. At least one of my parents, I think, was a little bit more comfortable with that. But still, it was something that, you know, as a very sensitive person, I felt like I had to kind of guard that part of myself and not really show it to a lot of people. But over time, I've learned that you can cry and be strong at the same time, right? Like there's strength in tears, there's strength in vulnerability in a way, right? And so I think this was, again, a really, really powerful piece. And this idea that, you know, sometimes your emotions and your mindset don't fully catch up with your circumstances, right? So Jada talked about the fact that emotionally, mentally, she still feels like she's in Baltimore. She still feels like she's got to survive, that it's life or death, right? Her and Demi grew up in these really kind of cutthroat situations, and she felt like she had to survive. She was still in that survival mode, but really she's thriving in terms of her circumstances, but mentally and emotionally, she's not caught up with that. And so she's raising her children as though she needs to be in this guarded environment. And in that way, she's stagnating herself and her children. And it was really powerful how she talked about, you know, when we do not allow the people that we love to see our vulnerable sides, to see our softness, to see our pain, we damage the relationship in some ways, and we also hurt ourselves. You have to be vulnerable to have true intimacy, to have true connection. And so allowing yourself to go there, allowing yourself to be uncomfortable. She talks about how Willow's tears, you know, can make her uncomfortable. You have to be willing to be uncomfortable in order to grow. And a part of growth involves emotional growth, which involves vulnerability and those sorts of things, right? So parents, adults, I think it's so healthy to show your children how you deal with the difficult things in life. Demi mentioned it, like you really can't just be strong for the kids. Yes, be strong. No, don't emotionally dump on them in unhealthy ways, but allow them to see how you deal in healthy ways with difficult emotions, because they too have to do it. So if you come home and every day it's like, I'm fine, and you're not, what do you think they're going to start telling you when they've had a bad day? Oh, I'm fine, right? Again, modeling. It's really important. Another really powerful moment in this clip is when Jada actually apologized to Willow for those times where she didn't really allow vulnerability to exist between them. And that was a really, really powerful and beautiful moment of connection there. And so I hope that inspires y'all as much as it does me to really be vulnerable and be okay with being uncomfortable with those kind of less than pleasant emotions with the people that we love. All right, on to the next clip.
What do you think that mental or emotional pull was to be
I
like?
wanted to be that girl.
Yeah.
I made my own story up that he wanted somebody that he could have wine with and do stuff. He's not the cause of why I opened that door. Right. I wanted to be something other than who I am.
Right.
And it was literally like giving my power away.
Right.
This is another short but powerful clip where Demi talks about how she gave her power away by trying to be somebody she's not. And I think this is something that a lot of us can relate to. Sometimes we want to be with someone or have something so bad that we make compromises that aren't really compromises, but are self-betrayal. So what's the difference between a compromise and betraying yourself? I mean, to me, the fine line is, where do you go past your comfort zone into actually stepping out of your authentic self, right? Like, it's good to go outside of your comfort zone, but that the minute you step over that authenticity line and you're not being true to like your core personhood, your core values, you've gone too far and you've betrayed yourself. And so anything that's going to cost you your authenticity is costing you too much. And, you know, this is something that takes a lot of self-awareness to cultivate, because it is hard to decipher sometimes what is your comfort zone versus who is your authentic self. And you really got to kind of do a lot of self-awareness exercises and ask yourself, is this a core value? Is this a core principle? Is this something that's core to my nature, to my essence? Or is it just like a habit or a behavior or tendency that I'm really comfortable with, but does not define who I am? All right, let's look at the next clip.
It was like a pressure cooker, because it had been 7, 8 years of silent suffering.
Right. I have a really hard time expressing anger, where then I would be like, I can handle it, I can do it, like it's fine, I'll just, and then I always then take it on myself.
I'll tell you this from personal experience. I've held on to so much anger, and it has turned into so much rage. And the sneaky thing about rage and anger and how it becomes its own thing, and you don't even recognize it until you look around you and you go, oh my God, there's a lot of scorched earth around me.
And it just pops up
It
out
just
of
pops
nowhere.
up, right? And it's because it's just sitting there because it wants to be heard.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to work yourself through that rageful little girl that is so angry of being neglected, not heard, not seen. No, you didn't say you loved me enough. You didn't toss that joker out the house and look at me instead of him. You know what I mean? Throw those bottles to the curb. You know what I mean? I should have been number one.
That's so real.
100%.
Yeah.
Again, this was another clip that just really resonated with me. I used to say that I have like a little baby Hulk inside of me, because I just had so much rage built up. And so, you know, when Jada was talking about how when you just let that anger build, it turns into rage, and you don't even see that it's there until it's been unleashed, right? And the thing that she also said that really struck me is the fact that your anger's in there and it just wants to be heard, right? Like those painful, terrible, unpleasant feelings that we have, we always want to suppress them. We want to mute them. We don't want to pay attention to them. We want to ignore them. But they need to be heard. They need to be felt. They need to be seen. It's like they're festering. And so you do have to kind of cultivate this practice of sitting and being with and showing compassion for those difficult feelings. And this is something that, you know, I think Zen Buddhism has a lot of great tips for. You know, while I am not a practicing Buddhist, it is something that I've learned from. So if anyone watching this is an actual practicing Buddhist, I would love any tips that you may have to offer. But, you know, reading books from folks like Thich Nhat Hanh, who talk about really sitting with your feelings and having compassion. There are other philosophers throughout the years and other traditions like Rumi, who talks about how all of these feelings, these negative and pleasant feelings alike, they are like guests that come into our house, and we should welcome them and hear them and then release them, right? And so I think that was just a really, really powerful piece about how important it is to acknowledge your anger, especially anger that dates back to childhood. It just wants to be heard. It wants to be felt. And so without wallowing, we need to go back. We need to process those things, whether it's with a professional therapist, with a counselor, in a faith-based setting, with a friend, however you need to release those things. All right, y'all. So that concludes my musings on this latest episode of Red Table Talk. Again, I really encourage you to go check it out. There were so many gems. These were just a few of the highlights. And that said, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are below. What do you think? What were some of your favorite moments from this episode? Can you relate to any of these things with your mother or with your daughters or with other strong women in your life? I would love to hear that. As always, you are my muses. You inspire me to come here and share my thoughts. And so I thank you for joining me. Have a good one.